Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present you my PhD research topic, which is about post-stroke rehabilitation. My name is László Kovács. I'm a first-year PhD student at the CTM at the Pediatric Center. My supervisor is Miklós Gagami, my SMS is Mark Hernátfői, and our statisticians are Boglárka Szentes and Gergely Agócs. Our vision is a future where lost brain functions after damage can be restored, and our mission to achieve it is in the first step to collect and synthesize all the available evidence regarding some of the newly emerging neurorehabilitational techniques. Here are our specific goals. We want to explore and quantify the relationship between the success of neurorehabilitation and the non-invasive brain stimulation in the first project, and the neurotrophic factor levels in the second project. Our first project is entitled Investigating the Effectiveness of Non-invasive Brain Stimulation on Cognitive Functions in Post-Stroke Cognitive Impairment. As many of us probably know, stroke is the #1 leading cause of disability worldwide. It can cause a wide spectrum of different disabilities like motor deficits, perceptual disabilities like agnosia, aphasia, and so on, but only a few people know that approximately in half of the cases, stroke is associated with a significant cognitive dysfunction, which is even much more difficult to recover from than motor deficits. Conventional rehabilitation methods like cognitive training yield only modest gains, and the results are heterogeneous. Transcranial direct current stimulation, or TDCS, and transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, have shown promising results in a previous meta-analysis, but there is still a gap of knowledge. Namely, there is the statistical evidence is not robust enough. We don't know the optimal parameters of stimulation and the groups that can benefit the most. Our aim is to fill this gap. Our question is whether these techniques improve the results of cognitive rehabilitation in post-stroke cognitive impairment. And our hypothesis is yes. We use the PICO framework to form our question. The population are post-stroke patients. The interventions are TDCS or TMS. The control groups received either placebo or standard care, and our primary outcomes are cognitive tests. Our search key consists of 3 domains in accordance with our question, namely cognition, stroke, and the interventions. Here are the number of studies found on PubMed, Embase, and Central. As our outcome measure, we chose the change of mean difference with 95% confidence intervals. We plan to analyze the tests both individually and in pooled categories, and so far we analyzed only the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Scale. And here are the results. The Montreal Cognitive Assessment is probably the most important cognitive test worldwide because it's the most used one. It measures general cognition through 7 cognitive domains on a 0 to 30 scoring system. A score of 26 indicates normal cognition. The range between 20 and 25 is often associated with mild cognitive impairment, and the score below 20 is often associated with serious cognitive dysfunction. However, these are not exact, they are not absolute cutoff points. We did a subgroup analysis based on the intervention type. In the TMS group, we included 13 studies and 685 patients, while in the TDCS group, 4 studies and 189 patients. All of the studies are RCTs except one study in the TMS group, which is a retrospective cohort study. The I-squared statistics have shown moderate to high heterogeneity in the TMS group and the high heterogeneity in the TDCS group, and the main reasons are Mostly the differences between the baseline treatment, the stimulation parameters, and the inclusion criteria regarding first ever stroke or the diagnosis of cognitive impairment. As we included any type of studies where one group received some form of non-invasive brain stimulation and the control group received exactly the same treatment except the stimulation. The pooled mean difference is 1.41 in the TMS group and 2.41 and 2.70 in the TDCS group. This exceeds the minimally clinically important difference, which is around 1-2 points, but still fails to exceed the minimal detectable change, which is approximately 5 points. This means moderate clinical relevance, but it's not robust enough to fall outside of the measurement uncertainty range of the test. All of the results are significant except the effect of the TDCS group, mostly because of the small number of studies, as the test for subgroup differences was not significant. In the progress, we are currently at the risk of bias and the statistical analysis phase, and the deadline for these two phases are the next Sunday. And let's have a quick glance on our second project, which explores the relationship between baseline neurotrophic factor levels and the success of neurorehabilitation. And a quick question: have you ever wondered why the nervous system heals considerably better in childhood and why it doesn't do so in adulthood? Well, there is a paradigm that the nervous system is about development and adaptation in the childhood, while in adulthood it's about keeping the previously formed pathways. The biological answer is called neuroplasticity, which is a network of different mechanisms. Some mechanisms are predominant in childhood, while others are predominant in adulthood. The primary mediators of neuroplasticity are called neurotrophic factors, and the brain-derived neurotrophic factor is probably the most famous representative of these molecules. A fun fact about these molecules is that their role is not universal. For example, in Parkinson's disease, their levels are decreased, while in autism or PTSD their levels are increased, and our aim is to explore the exact relationship between the success of neurorehabilitation and these factor levels. Our question is whether higher initial neurotrophic factor levels are associated with best functional outcomes after rehabilitation. Here is as a recap, the summary of our specific goals. And this is my favorite quote. This literally means that a good question is a half solution to the problem. And thank you for your attention.
Hello, and thank you for the presentation. I have a question about your first project. You said the comparator is either sham or cognitive behavior therapy. Did you see any difference between these two, as like between the comparator?
We want to do a subgroup analysis based on the control type. So sham stimulation or no intervention or cognitive training and so on.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations. Also to the first project. You said that the TCD, so that second TDCS, yes, sorry. So the heterogeneity was a result of an homogeneous inclusion criteria, and what did I understand right? So you saw significant heterogeneity in that subgroup.
Yes.
88% or something like that. And you said that the reason of this heterogeneity was lying in the details of the inclusion criteria of the individual studies.
Not just the inclusion criteria, but the parameters of stimulation.
Yeah, so some of this, but then you cannot reuse these studies, right? if you have different inclusion criteria?
No. Our question is, for example, if one group receives the stimulation and gives the exact baseline treatment, then the effect is...
You said something about the definition of stroke and the days after the stroke. So if you have differences in these, then you cannot compare the study's results because they are not in the same setting, and so you cannot pool the results, right?
Well, please, can you repeat your question in another way?
So my question is, so if you have a heterogeneity because you have not homogeneous inclusion criteria of the studies, they don't define the state similarly, then you have a biological difference between the setups, and so you cannot really pool the studies' results. Am I right, or am I understanding right the question, or how do you, so what's
Our idea was to include any type of studies. I extracted all of the data regarding the inclusion criteria, and we want to do a subgroup analysis also based on the different aspects of inclusion criteria. This is because some studies have very rigorous inclusion criteria, like it was mandatory that to be a first ever stroke. In other studies, this was not specified. So also in other studies can be a first ever stroke, but it wasn't written in the paper. Also in some studies, it was mandatory to be a diagnosis of cognitive impairment, or in some other studies, they didn't mention it. So we want a subgroup analysis that, for example, the diagnosis of cognitive dysfunction was mentioned. It was mandatory. In this study, it was not mentioned, and also for the first ever stroke. To have a clear view on the whole of the studies.
Okay, well, thank you.
Just a quick question, general. How we can define this non-invasive brain stimulation? Is it generally accepted depending on the country, national-wide? Is it worldwide accepted, treating stroke with that? Or are there any difference between North America, Asia, Europe, or is generally accepted treatment after stroke?
So the question refers to the definition of non-invasive brain stimulation.
Yes.
So neuromodulation, I guess we know what is it. Influencing the functioning of the nervous system. It can be by medication or by stimulation. Any type of intervention that influence the function of the nervous system is neurostimulation, for example. And there are many, many types of neurostimulation. So the essence is to influence the functioning somehow, either by direct current or magnetic impulses or alternative current or ultrasounds and so on.
For me, it's a general question because I'm from outside, I'm a pediatrician, or we can say, I don't know how is it accepted in Europe, in different countries, because as I see the journals which you included, all was Chinese or Asian.
Yes, this was
publications. I don't know how generally accepted in Europe or North America, how there are any difference between this non-invasive brain stimulation techniques in different countries or different regions of the world.
So the definition is universal around the world, but it was very interesting for me that this type of research is not so popular, for example, in Europe or in the US. So the vast majority of these studies are conducted in either South Korea or mainly in China.
Okay, that's what I find out. Maybe there are differences between patients too, because they hold different genetics, they hold a different kind of treatment, but it's just a question.
I don't think that there are big populational differences like ethnicity or something like that, because the concept is very simple. For example, in the TDCS, people are stimulated with direct current. Or in the transcranial magnetic stimulation, the The cortical excitability is either stimulated or inhibited through the frequency of magnetic impulses. So it's a very simple biophysical concept.
Thank you very much. It's interesting.
You're welcome.